You are listening to the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast, coming to you virtually live from high atop the historic Raleigh building in beautiful downtown Raleigh. Our featured spirit of the week is Mayberry Spirits of Mount Airy, a small batch craft distillery created with the goal to lift the spirit by making premium, unique single malt sorghum whiskeys, always promoting the values of community, sustainability, and authenticity. Check them out online at mayberryspirits.com and on social at Mayberry Spirits. And now, the Misfits in the Dish Pit.
This is a special episode of the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast. We're recording at the Kitchen Studios, live to tape, in downtown Raleigh. This isn't our typical episode, because on those tambourines, all of them, we got Mike Rosado. And on guitar, George Hodge, who was also the co-host on a recent episode of the Pencil Pushers podcast. And we brought in some special people that aren't normally on the show. Hell, not even normally in North Carolina. One hails from New York and then lived in California, but now is here in the Triangle. And he brought to my attention another person who makes a lot of wine. What are we doing here? We're introing this thing. All right. So with me today is Swarup Badopadai.
Very good. Wow.
And this is the best part. I'm going to totally mispronounce Jennifer's last name. Jennifer Reichardt.
That's it. You got it.
Boom. Yes. And I am your host, Max Trujillo, and this is the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Wow.
What an intro.
You can check out the Pencil Pushers podcast anywhere you find podcast. And George on
Not
Jack
bad,
the Radio, New Reveille.
Not bad for government work.
Yeah. Thank you, gents.
That's fun. Have a good show.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, that was just fun.
That was an interesting way to start the show.
For sure.
You're setting your standard high now.
I know.
Everyone that doesn't have a live band intro is just gonna be jealous.
It's pretty cool. And what's funny, and the reason that even had to happen was through a conversation before we got on the mics. George, who is also in a band that's local to this area called New Reveille, one of his bandmates just happens to also be the brother of one of your good friends, Amy Best Cook. Jennifer, she is your friend, and she is also involved in winemaking, and her brother, he is the creator of New Reveille, the band that George is involved in. So what a crazy coincidence. It's even crazier because, as you said before, you're from California, Sonoma County, really more specifically,
Yep.
right? Petaluma's
home. The winery's in Santa Rosa.
Nice. So for a point of reference, Raft Wines is your winery.
Yes.
Or is your label, I should say.
Yeah.
You don't have a winery per se, but you have a place where you crush and make the wine, correct?
Yeah, so I'm in a custom crush facility in Santa Rosa. So there's about 40 different brands that are made there. So they do about 1,000 tons every harvest, and I make like 15. So big difference, but it's fun. It's a really good collaborative space. You know, it's like how you have co-working space here, and everyone kind of feeds off each other's energy. It's a similar sort of situation.
What an example. I mean, it's a Monday night, and we just got done doing other things that were creative and fun, and we just said, well, everybody's kind of meeting here randomly. Let's just let it flow and be the way it is. So as I'm saying that, I'm opening a bottle of your wine.
Yay.
And let's talk about this to kind of get started. Swarup, you brought Jennifer's wines to my attention specifically because she's in North Carolina, and we'll get into that in a moment.
Yep.
But how did you find her wines?
So I happen to be listening to the Crew podcast by, I believe,
Chappie.
Chappie, yeah.
Yeah,
so
he's
Chappie,
the best.
and Jennifer's show was listening to it. It was actually a really captivating discussion. And you know what? I typed in raftwines.com and looked it up, and I was looking for some rosé. And we're not having the rosé right now. We're having the Viognier, but the rosé is outside right now.
I might convince you to open it later. But
Maybe we'll figure that out.
There can be more.
but the rosé, I'll tell you, was outstanding. Like it had this mouth-watering acidity to it, that just made me want to drink it more, and I did. And I didn't remember the next morning, but that's besides the point.
That's not my fault.
That's not your fault. That was the lack of inhibition. But no, it was a great rosé. Really enjoyed it, and I was like, and when it came this time of year, when I saw your spring release, I was like, I gotta jump on it. So,
Yeah.
So Jennifer, you and I met, I guess, gosh, it was like a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
You were here for Triangle Wine Experience, and we were doing a podcast. Both Matthew and I were doing this great behind-the-scenes podcast. We went all over the place, went to the Frankie Lemon School, did a little short video about the school in itself, and that is a school that benefits from the money generated from all of these experiences, and that's where typically a winery from California gets paired with a local Triangle-based restaurant here in North Carolina. And so I think you were not paired with somebody at the time. You were just along for the ride. Is that right?
Yeah, I sort of signed. It kind of sounds like a band, like you signed with a distributor, but I hadn't fully signed on the dotted line. Like we were working on it, the paperwork was going through, but I wasn't fully legal to sell wine yet. So we kind of just used it as an opportunity to meet a ton of new people, and to sort of slowly introduce the brand to people. So I haven't been back since then. So we're hitting it hard the next couple of days across the state, kind of saying hello to everyone.
Yeah, and as a point of reference, you were hanging out with some pretty cool kids at the time. Jim Clendenin from Aubin Clément was on our show that time, and he was at the tasting. But then afterwards, we were introduced to a lot of the other somms and winemakers, like Raj Par was there, and I think he was in your crew. You guys were all hanging out, and Pax Mali was there as well.
Not a bad crew to be a part of.
No, and forgive me because I forget his first name, but from Joliet.
Scotty Schultz, he's the best.
Yes. So it was what many winemakers or people that are fans of wine right now are saying, oh yeah, those are the guys that are, and gals, pardon me, that are really doing it. And so we got to try all these wines, and being that I'm from California originally, I kind of haven't seen this side of the world yet because it started happening after I left.
Yeah.
And so now I'm really excited to see like where this new era of winemaking is coming from. And so maybe let's get there. I know that you have this great history. I think we need to start there. It kind of starts with your pops.
Yeah.
With Jim.
The Duckman.
The Duckman of Liberty Ducks. He's fourth generation duck farmer, correct?
Correct.
And so his duck farms are in Petaluma.
Yep.
And this is Liberty Ducks are purchased and consumed by restaurants kind of all over the country.
Yeah, all over the country, primarily in California. Shipping costs have gotten a bit ridiculous, to say the least. So unfortunately, that's like limited the amount of, just because it's always a fresh product. So it's really hard to get a fresh product across the country in a short amount of time that doesn't cost more than a plane ticket for a person.
Right. So even on social media, you are the duck daughter.
Duck daughter,
Is
yeah.
that right?
So I started my Instagram account in 2011, before I even had worked up my first, right before I worked my first harvest, actually. Yeah. And so it had nothing to do. It was just like you needed to pick a name, and at that point, it was just a photo editing site, and then it sort of like created its own personality, and it's become the thing that it is today.
Well, and Raft, even in its name, is a reference to the duck industry as well,
yes.
right?
It's a community of waterfowl. If you see them floating on a pond together, so water-based animals floating. So it could be a raft of geese, or a raft of penguins, even.
Yeah, a murder of crow. A raft of ducks.
A raft of ducks. But once they take off, it's considered a flock. So it's definitely, but I've always been like a water baby. In my spare time, I would never call myself a surfer, but I enjoy going to the beach and like paddling around in the water, not shredding the gnar or anything like that.
I like how we have words for things like this is a group of ducks when they're in the water, but then we have a separate word from when they're flying, yet we don't have a word to say, you all are coming today. Instead, we just say, y'all.
Yeah.
But that's like
but that's why I like to come visit the South.
And that's why
you can say it without people judging you.
So welcome into the South. We're obviously here recording in North Carolina and specifically to Raleigh. And so you were on your first kind of wine tour?
My first ever sales trip.
Yeah.
Which is really exciting. So I self-distribute in California, which is, it's fun. And I go down to San Francisco. I go to Oakland. I go to the East Bay. And Sonoma and Napa County, but I've never like gone afar, if you will. Yeah. And so it worked out. I have a wedding later this week or this weekend. And so kind of perfect timing because at this point the market's had 3 different releases of mine, but small amounts because I make a very small amount of wine. So it's been, trickling in, and finally it was like, okay, let's like hit it hard once I bumped up volume, still minuscule production compared to most people.
Yeah.
But it was a good excuse to come out and meet a lot of people and kind of actually put a face to the name.
Well, towards the end of the show, we'll get into exactly where and specifically you are going and these great restaurants. But let's get into your winemaking. I mean, let's talk about it. So you said small production. What does that mean? How small of a production are you?
Well, in 2016, that was my first year launching the brand. It was only 350 cases, so like next to nothing.
Yeah, that's just a few barrels.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's what is that? That's like eight barrels.
Yeah,
something like that.
Yeah.
So that's manageable. Right?
Yeah, yes, it was very manageable. I mean, I didn't distribute any of those wines because there was just like none of them. And then,
so what did you do with that?
I sold
vintage
it to restaurants and local people in Sonoma and the Bay Area. So none of that really left our kind of like greater driving area. Nothing was further than an hour away. And then 2017, I made about 550 cases, so not quite doubled, but definitely significant more. Now in 2018, I haven't bottled it all yet, but I'll be bottling about 1,000 cases. So doubled, doubled every year since I started, and gonna do my hardest not to double again this year because 1,000 to 2,000 is a lot. It's a big jump.
Well, and that's interesting too. I talked to, oh my God, I forget his name now, but I talked to the winemaker of Peregrine Wines from New Zealand. He and I were working together. I was a wine rep in LA, and he was in my car. And he talked about expansion, and he's like, yeah, Peregrine also makes he makes Matua, and it's like a massively large brand.
Unreal amount of wine.
But when he was asked to make Matua, I think Vineyard Brands might be the company that produces them or distributes out. They were like, well, we're going to need you to hit this like 100,000 case production type of thing, and Peregrine was used to making like 10,000 cases, and so that's obviously bigger than what you're doing, but still small in the scope of like wineries around the world.
Yeah.
And I said, oh wow, so what does that mean to expand? I didn't know that there was the 100,000 case model up there. I just heard expand. So what are you going to make, like 30, 40 cases? He's like, no, mate, when you expand, you don't expand to go twice as big. I can't do it. But when
that went Scottish really quickly, by the way.
It sounded horrible. But when you expand, you've got to think, like, expanding has to expand. You have to figure out how big you're going to be and grow into it. And so it's like, we're going to go from 10,000 to 150,000 case production, because if I'm going to build a building to do this, I'm just going to do it, and let's do it right. And we'll build it. We'll fit ourselves into it. So, but we're not there yet with Raft wines.
Well, that's the beauty of being also in the custom crush, is that it allows me room to expand without having to put in a lot of big ticket capital into it. The grapes are still very expensive because you pay all the grapes up front, and there's a lot of processing costs, but you don't have to buy a forklift, you don't have to buy a press, so it allows you to grow the brand without having sort of all these extra costs, which is really amazing and quite a luxury.
Do you feel like you want to stay in that style of winemaking versus having your own vineyard at some point?
Vineyard is a whole nother thing. So I actually think even before I had my own winery, I would just love my own like tasting space. So that's one thing that I do miss out on, is that I can have tasting appointments at the winery, but it's a warehouse winery. It's cool, but it's not glamorous by any stretch of the imagination. But I'm also still a one-woman show. So like if someone is coming to Sonoma County and they want to schedule a tasting appointment with me, then I have to be the one person there who's available. So I would love to like have even a cooperative tasting space. Rent is very expensive in the area.
We need the kitchen winery.
Yeah, where you have 3, 4, 5 different wineries, all small brands under a certain case production, where you might not need it every day, or maybe you have one of everyone's wines open all the time, but then if someone's really coming in for something, or if you have a special event, it's just like that space. So that would
Sounds
be
like that's the next thing.
Yeah.
It would make sense if wineries like, say, such as like the ones we mentioned earlier, if like you and Pax and Raj were like, yeah, let's all just put our wines in this one spot and tasted them together. I think like there's a similarity in style, but it would attract the same taste, the same person that would want to taste those wines.
I mean, there are pop-up in kitchens all the time. Why don't you have pop-up wine bars?
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
So 2011 was your first crush, and then 2016 you released your first label. So 5 years of figuring out how to make wine?
Yeah, 5 years, 7 harvests. So I did a couple in Southern Hemisphere.
Right.
So it was 5 in Sonoma County and 2 abroad before I launched. And I kind of just wanted to work with the many different styles as I could. So my 2 abroad harvests were both in very big production. So it's important because most, I would say like 95% of the wine people drink is made in that style.
Sure.
So it's good to know. And then a lot of Sonoma Coast kind of Pinot Noir and Chardonnay producers. And then my last harvest was with a predominantly sparkling producer. So it was just like, I don't want to make sparkling wine, but I wanted to learn all about
It'd
it.
be nice to know how to. Right?
Yeah. And it wasn't a lack of like, I didn't say, okay, this is how many harvests I want to work, and that's when I'm going to start the brand. It sort of happened really organically, and I just figured out, like, with my background in food production and making a product and having my own product to sell, it was a really hand in hand to like make my own wine and having my own wine to sell. And I still work for the family farm. So to do that, it was sort of like I just needed to create my own schedule.
So was there like a moment where you just said, I'm going to roll the dice right now? Like, was there that like spark?
I always had it brewing in my, or fermenting, I should say, in my head. But it actually took, I worked a harvest for Litter Eye in Sonoma County. And one of the reasons why I started the brand when I started it is because they were selling a bunch of used barrels. And I was like, well, I know that, because I've worked with those barrels, I know that those are trustworthy barrels. And so I'm going to buy the barrels and then I'm going to find the grapes. And then I ended up going from making 1 wine to 2 wines to 6 different wines my first harvest. So obviously very small quantities of each of those, but just like I got to experiment and explore a lot of different avenues right off the bat, which was really cool.
Excellent.
Oh man, I love this whole idea of just having that ability to do that at a crush facility where it's basically like we're releasing a podcast. We've already released it at this point of the cookery, where it's like a wine incubator, and that ends up giving someone like yourself, Jennifer, who, you didn't have a winery to do this and you didn't have a lot of previous experience other than like working in the area, it gives you access to do this. And then you get to be creative immediately in the process. And creativity definitely is being shown a lot in where you're going with your wines. Why don't we just at least talk about what we're drinking right now, and that'll kind of lead into, let me see if I can say it right. It's Jonquille.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's the Raft Wines Jonquille. This is a Viognier from Love Ranch in Madera. Mm-hmm. This is like the armpit of California, right?
There's a lot to like digest out of what you just said.
Yes, please elaborate.
So Jonquille means daffodil in French, and probably those of you who speak French are gonna be like, that's not how you pronounce it, but we're gonna go with it.
Right, they're French. It's okay.
I'm sorry, my French accent's terrible. But when I drink this wine, I kind of think of spring, and when I think of spring, I think of daffodils, and so I wanted to give it a proprietary name. And the Viognier vineyard switched from Harvest 1 to Harvest 2, and that was right when I was bottling and figuring out the name. So I gave it a proprietary name, so it kind of the style was the same, even if the vineyard changed. Okay. But Love Ranch, I love them. I love Love Ranch. Yeah. And I want to keep working with them. So even though it's got the name now, it's still going to just be called Jonquille. But they're up.
Madeira.
It is Madeira. Yeah. It's Madeira foothills if you want to get nitty gritty about it. But it is 1,300 feet elevation above a valley floor. So this vineyard is about 30 minutes from the Yosemite border on the south side. So it's up. And you're kind of like looking down at the valley from it. Okay. And so it's decomposed granite because it's, really close to Yosemite. You think of what those rock structures are made of.
Okay, that makes sense that there could be some really cool microclimates in that area. And how high, what's the elevation like there?
The vineyard itself is like 1,300 feet. Okay. And it's all Rhone varietals. It's where I make my Counoise from as well. And I like it because it's hot during the day, and when you go in the afternoon, there's like a wind, like Les Mistral in France. Right. And then it doesn't get cold at night, but there is some temperature fluctuation. But it is always the first thing that I bring in, because Viognier is it's notoriously not a very acidic grape, so I bring it in much earlier than I think a lot of producers in California do. So it's been really fun. I've become kind of a accidental Viognier crusader because a lot of buyers were like, oh, Viognier.
Well, there's been a lot of accidents over the years with certain white varietals. My biggest pet peeve or just red flag is when I would go to a small independent wine producer in California and I'd see them and they're like, oh, we make 18 varietals. Like, dude, don't do that. Don't make everything just because you can.
Yeah.
Let's figure out the grapes a little bit. And maybe to their credit, that's what they're doing. They're like, I'm going to do 18 and maybe only 6 will be really good.
Right.
But I just happen to be there when they're forcing me to try 18 different wines. So,
yeah. It's so hard during harvest. You have to like say no because there's always something cool that you're like, oh, I want to make that. And you're like, no, but I can't. I don't need another one.
Yeah. But like your list of varietals just in general, like
It's a very interesting list for sure.
Cavillon, Syrah, Cunoise, your Fleur Porte-Mer, am I saying that right?
Fleur Pommery. Yeah.
Porte-Mer. But what is that?
That's my rosé.
That's the rosé.
Yeah, so it
And
translates
it's
to
Cunoise rosé?
no Grenache.
A Grenache rosé. Okay, cool. And so you do a Grenache as well. Antonella?
Yep, that's 3 Italian varietals that are co-planted and co-fermented.
Oh, wow. What varietals are you doing there?
Corvina, Molinara, and Rondinella.
So you're doing what the early stages of what an Amarone would be.
I am, but there's another DOC in Italy called Bardolino, and I'm making it in that style. So
Okay.
it's kind of like
All right.
Italy's answer to Beaujolais
Yeah.
almost, but because it's Italian grapes just tend to be tannic. It definitely has like some grip to it, but it's 11.5% alcohol, so it's really kind of meant as an aperitif.
I'll pretend like you brought it and we just tasted it.
It's in the
that was
car.
excellent.
It's in the car.
No, that's great.
So,
But that's the fun thing about your winemaking, and just from what I've been noticing right now is I don't know. Like I feel like there has been a recent progression and separation from doing what everybody has been doing for so long. Yet everybody did what they did for so long. Like why is it in just say like the last 10 years we're starting to really understand other varietals, other styles of winemaking, all within what were kind of the old traditional places of like Napa and Sonoma.
What's going on?
Yeah, why?
So for me personally, I can't speak to like everybody, but for me it's a cost thing. I want to sell my wine to my consumers in the $20 and $30 price point. And I cannot buy Sonoma County Pinot Noir, Napa Cab, Sonoma County Chardonnay even for that matter, because the sticker shock is so expensive. And
That makes sense.
I grew up in the industry making Sonoma Coast Pinot Noir and Sonoma Coast Chardonnay. I would love to make them, but also the vineyards that I want to work with are some of the best of the best, and I really can't afford those, especially at the price point that I want to sell the wine
So
at.
if you had money, you'd be making Chardonnay and Pinot Noir right now?
I actually don't think so. I would love to have a Pinot at some point.
Sure.
But I'm not in a hurry to make that happen. Like I want it to come naturally and organically and not force it.
I think what you're doing right now is excellent. First off, this Viognier that we're having right now, it's got great texture to it. It's got this like full body texture to it. It's got minerality. It's got citrus. It's
Tons of
mouthwatering.
citrus.
Yeah, the citrus is just popping both in the nose and the palate.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
herbaceous. It's not sweet like
Not
you're
sweet.
gonna get at all.
No.
Yeah, you still kept that structure, that acid structure in the wine. And but what I'll say is it doesn't taste old world to me. It tastes new to me. It tastes like a flavor of wine that I've yet to try with this varietal. I mean, you're doing something different, which I appreciate because we're trying to push forward, right? And it's cool if you're like, dude, I can make, I hate when I'm stupid, when I'm trying to be smart. I was just going to say Volnay, but that's not the right word. What did I say?
Vouvray?
No, that's Chenin. But what's the big Viognier in Northern Rhone? Condrieu.
Condrieu. Yes.
It's like Condrieu, but it's not because it doesn't taste anything like that. But that's like a classic style of Viognier.
Yeah.
Northern Rhone. You're using these varietals, but you're I don't know. It's like when we talk about sense of place with farming. We just had this excellent conversation with the gents over at the Cortez. Now, for you may or may not know who the Cortez are, but they're a great local restaurant, kind of Latin-based, Mexican-based, but doing seafood, but really kind of doing progressive North Carolina-style cuisine with a Hispanic underlining. But so you're not going to say that's not a Mexican restaurant. By no means. It's just some of the flavors, the technique, things that are done are doing that. And they just had an article in Time Life, and they were named one of the top. They were co-top restaurant in 2018 in Raleigh by our local food writer. The chef was a semifinalist in the James Beards in our area. So that I'm establishing that they know what the hell they're doing.
Yeah.
But the point is, they were taking what they were used to cooking from their homeland, but then coming here and just kind of assimilating the flavors to the local region. And so why can't that be that in winemaking, instead of saying we're going to try to do old world?
Yeah.
It's like, no, we're going to maybe do some technique that might be old world or so, but we're also going to be of the land and of the place.
I think you just explained my winemaking style for me.
Boom.
Yeah, you got it. Just like 2 sips in, you're like, I got this.
Because it doesn't feel old to me. It feels different. It
No,
feels
well, I think
fresh.
at the end of the day, we're still in California. You can't deny that it's California. You can make lower alcohol, you can make higher acidity, but there's still something about that California sunshine that you have to fight so hard to hide it and fight it. So why would you?
Why would you?
Yeah. So I think I take inspiration and cues from old world style wines, especially in the Rhone. But I make 2 different Syrahs. One Syrah is old world, like through and through, and the other one, I call it my love letter to California, because there's no denying that it's a California wine.
Yeah.
So it's being proud of where you're from too. Like I think that we can make great wine in California. I still think we're fighting against centuries of not making wine. They've got a little bit of a lead on us, and they know what works. And so I think there's still even opportunity to grow and explore with what's planted. As the climate does seem to be changing for us a little bit. Maybe reevaluating what we're planting and where we're planting it.
Yeah.
The thing that interested me most, and the reason why I wanted you to hook up with Max and be able to have this forum, is that the only place you're distributing outside of California is North Carolina.
Yeah.
So was there a specific choice for that, or blind luck, or
it's sort of all of the above. Right when I started, I was approached by a few different distributors in several different states, and at the time, 350 cases, like you can't do anything, and so. When the time came to find maybe some distribution in another state, some people had already filled their books, or they thought that I wouldn't fit anymore. The distribution change is such a fluid market. And Jason Gavin of Cellar Distribution in North Carolina found me on Instagram. He's who distributes the Pax Wines and Patrick Cappiello.
Oh, right. Cellar, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So he found me online, I think, kind of through probably I'm friends with them, and through I'm not actually sure. I never asked him how he found me, but he's like, I'm coming out during harvest. Can I come taste your wines? Sure. And I think we just kind of established this good rapport, and then I have family friends here. I have family here.
He was probably at the Triangle Wine Experience the year before when I met you, and probably tasted your wines then.
No, he was the one who brought me there.
Oh, okay, never mind.
Yeah.
Never mind. I thought it was cool.
No, but and I wouldn't have. This wouldn't have been the. I think in one sense of the wine world, you should be in California, you should be in New York. But everyone's in New York, and not everyone's in North Carolina. And what I love about North Carolina is that I see hints of what Sonoma County was, or the food, the farm to table. Everyone's getting really excited about the cuisine here. And as when I started talking to people in the restaurant community, the wines kind of hadn't caught up. Yeah. You were still getting hit with the same 10 brands. And so now all of a sudden you have these smaller distributors who have the ability to bring in smaller quantities of wine. Because most books would look at the amount of wines that I have to give for them to sell and laugh. It's pennies. Mm-hmm. And it's still, I think, small for Jason too, but he's liking to bring these small batch wines to kind of these farm to table restaurants or...
Well, not to be trying to be profound here, but I feel like that is a metaphor for what is happening in economics in all industries because of communication, because of really affordable shipping that never once existed to the level it is now, and how immediate it is. I mean, Swap, you bought Raft wines and they're here because you put a purchase order in, and it's the accessibility was so easy because you could find her wines on Instagram, and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, cool, I'm gonna buy a couple bottles. It's so easy. But the same could be said about the beer industry. The same could be said about the tech industry, about any it's all so accessible and small, and a big distributor might not want to waste time with a small brand, but then small distributors are creating a niche that's coming in. And to be honest, I mean, that's like the big wine houses are probably losing the attention of people that truly like wine.
Yeah.
But like the masses, they're still gonna feed the masses or drink the masses, whatever you want to say. But
Well, people are still going to walk into your big grocery store and buy wine there.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
you're not
I
going
find
to stop
my
that.
like on my and I always hate when I end up buying a wine from like the local grocery store, but it happens because of necessity. I might be headed over to a friend's house or I'm on my way home and it's like right there, the convenience. It's like, God damn it. I just told everybody, if you're going to buy rosé, please buy it within the year, like within a year of it being produced. Like, don't get 2017 rosé
Except
right
for
now.
mine, it's really good.
Oh, is that right?
There is structure to her rosé that can last.
Well, as I say, that we can.
All right,
It's another
okay.
topic, but that should not be a rule. It depends on the
it's my
producer.
rule. It's my rule because I think that I like fresh with rosé, but that's a great. Okay, then prove me wrong. Tell me why fresh rosé of the season is not the only reason why you should be buying rosé.
So you need to go out and find a bottle of Domaine Tempier, which is arguably one of the most regarded rosé producers.
Domaine Tempier?
Yeah, it's Bindle.
Right.
It's like the rosé.
Yes.
And their rosé ages so beautifully. And I think there's a lot of I agree with you wholeheartedly. There's a lot of rosé that you should drink really quickly.
If you have to have cupcake rosé,
yes.
then get the 2018.
Do not
if you
sit
were
on
in
that
2019.
wine. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
How about Miyomi?
Don't talk about Naomi in this room, my friend. Don't bring it up.
I hear the hatred in your voice.
but I think people like we were talking about Scott Schultz, like the Jolie Lade rosé, like his Trousseau, like stuff like that. It just gets better with time. Just like whites get better in time. Like this Viognier, it's the 2018, it's 2019, so it's still pretty young. Yeah. In January, it wasn't ready to drink. I'm glad I got it bottled in March and now can like show it even 2 months later again. And it's just gonna keep getting better. Like
this has got a backbone to it.
Yeah, that acid will mature, and I bet you'll get that like caramelization and creaminess that will come out in vintages, or like that golden caramel thing that will happen.
In my rosé, I wish that I could sell it like the vintage later. Like I've had a couple of 2017 bottles, but like that weird gap where like my 2018 isn't bottled yet, but I'm still needing rosé for events or dinners or whatnot, and I open them like, oh, it's just it settles into itself kind of in the bottle, and it's pretty. So it just depends. But yes, I would say often, but drink them.
It's a good rule of thumb.
It's a good rule of thumb.
Yeah.
Until you start getting into like
but
cool
see,
wine buying.
What you did was what every wine nerd does. Is anytime, like if Matt was here, my counterpart, he's the nerd, and it's like anytime, and I mean that with respect because he actually knows what he's talking about. But anytime I make any generality, because I like to simplify everything in life, of course he'll go, "You can't say those grand sweeping statements," and I go, "I get it. I get that." Every now and then there is something that goes against the grain. But generically speaking, and to my point, we were talking about buying wines at the grocery store.
Yeah.
If you're going to buy wines at the grocery store, you will notice that right now in 2019 that many of the 2017s, and dare I say, because I saw it the other day at Harris Teeter, a 2015 that was on super discount. Ooh, $6.99. So it used to be $17.99. It's like, yeah, because that wine has been sitting on that shelf for 3 years. So that's why, like, and rosé is not typically, especially at that quality level, going to be great after its prime, which is the season of which it is released.
Yeah.
So
it'll be a pretty pink vinegar.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, or you make sangria with it.
And sadly, like, like not everyone, the wine world in general, or the wine drinkers of America tend to like what they like, and they go with that. So when there are these outliers and they're doing odd varietals, Counoise, like who the hell's making Counoise? And
no one.
I don't even know what that varietal, people are going to be scared about it. But once you put it in their glass and they taste it, they go, oh, I get it now. So
I'm beyond excited about trying that bottle. The color you got on that is ridiculous.
It's cool. So that's like my red wine disguised as a rosé is what I call it. So it's 3 weeks on the skins, but it looks like a dark rosé almost.
Yeah. And it's real opaque and murky because I assume no filtering is happening.
This is the first year I did nothing filtered. So it's all just kind of wine in its most raw form.
Now, I saw an Instagram post about why you did like your entire spring 2018 line not unfiltered. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
I make such a small quantity. When you filter a wine, you lose a chunk of wine. And these,
So you're cheap, is what you're saying.
No, I want wine for people to drink.
It's just like the grandma, like, squeeze the toothpaste all the way to the end.
That's me, man.
Economical. Yeah.
But it does, I think with the rosé, especially because the rosé was one of the only ones I did last year, it kind of beats it up, and it's a gentle process. So the filter that we have in the winery is what's called a crossflow, and it is much more gentle than what these big old plate filters that was kind of the old technology. But I just really wanted to showcase the wine in its kind of most raw
natural
form. Yeah. This harvest was a really difficult one for me personally, and especially the rosé. There was lots going on just in that wine and in the familial relationship that I have with that wine. So I just kind of wanted to just strip it back and just be like, this is what it is. Mm-hmm. There's going to be some sediment. It's not going to hurt you. But like the Viognier, I mean, it's crystal clear. There's nothing in that. But it's okay. A little sediment's okay.
What do you think your flavor-wise, what are you gaining? Or let's
I
put
think
it the
it
other way.
just becomes more palatable earlier. I think when I was filtering the wines, it was hiding them for a longer period of time. And I never filtered everything. But as from year 1 to year 2 to now year 3, I'm trying to not filter anything. And they're microbially very solid. Nothing is going to like go off in them. It's just so at that point, I would just be filtering for vanity's sake.
Okay.
And I just didn't think I needed it.
What does your father think of your wines?
He likes them. He's so funny. So I make a Sangiovese as well, just because I'm a little spread out. It's fine. But it was one that he didn't not like it, but it wasn't what he would like grab right away. And then I always just like leave wine at his house because he's a wine enthusiast, and he goes over to people's houses all the time, or people come over all the time to eat because we're a kind of a bon vivant family.
Yeah. Of course.
And he said like the last week and a half, he's drank 2 bottles with people because he's like, I'm just really liking this one now. So, like it's changing and bottle as it's aging and it's mellowing out. Sangiovese is a hard one to bottle within a year, which is what I do, just because there is more tannic structure to it. So I think he likes it a little more.
Swarp, you and I both have daughters. Yeah. Wouldn't it be cool if there was a certain point in our life where our daughters are making us the alcohol that we're drinking?
Come, give me my Sangiovese, girl.
And then we can be super shitty and like selective. Like, I'm not really feeling the Sangiovese. Could you try something else? Like
a Counoise?
Yeah,
like a Counoise. So Counoise, well, we talked about the color of it, but it's one of the 13 allowable varietals in Chateauneuf du Pape. So you can, most of the time it gets blended away. It's not...
It's rarely seen in its whole form.
Very, 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 very rarely. I think even less so probably in France than in California, but people in California just don't even know it exists. So there's a few people in California that make it, and like I can name 4 people, and like that's it.
So how would you describe Counoise, and how maybe like parallel it to other varietals so we kind of have an idea of what the flavor profile?
There's lots of like berry notes to it, but also like water. Like this one, especially the 2018, it's like a salted watermelon sort of, because it's got the minerality that's in the Viognier. It's the same vineyard just across the row from it, so it's got that like minerality,
stoniness
to it. But it's very berry. There's just kind of this dusty herbal tannin because it is a red wine, even though it doesn't look like it. That always catches people off guard. I had a UK importer come in to try the wines. I don't have enough for him to even think about doing, but he was just kind of curious about it. And I poured him a barrel sample of it. It was right before I bottled, and it just... his mind, he didn't know what to say. He's like, it's good. I just don't know how to quantify. It was fun.
That's cool. You broke his brain a little bit.
And
That's
it was
excellent.
Really fun. So I think it's really fun. I make 1 ton of it. So 2 barrels, 50 cases. That's all I can get from this vineyard because there's not very much of it planted.
Wow. That's fantastic.
I mean, that's the cool thing about it. You're doing like ultra small production, really really owning in on the quality of the grapes that you're getting, and it really shows. I mean, that's what, after I had the rosé last year, I knew I needed to get more stuff from you this year. And that's why I was like, all right, I got to get the Counoise, got to get the Syrah.
I know, and I forgot. We'll get you a bottle.
That's okay. It's all good.
Something got lost in shipments somewhere.
That was just my brain not working when I was packing.
No, that's fine. But how cool is that you ordered wine and then Jennifer was actually flying to our state and hand delivered those wines to you?
I mean, I was not expecting that email. I was like, all right, I'm buying this thing. And all of a sudden she emails me. It's like, hey, I'm going to be in North Carolina. Want me to hand it to you? Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. They talk about small batch and connected. Yeah. Maybe it's just like we're all kind of living in that world no matter where we live. Mm-hmm. We're living that small town lifestyle and we connect with that when we're around each other, And so I do want to get to one of the big reasons you're actually here, and I would just guessing that from the time that you were here before with the Triangle Wine experience, and seeing all that was going on here, that possibly that led to the idea, obviously with your distributor, doing a tour out here in North Carolina. So today is May 6th. This episode will show up whenever it shows up. But tomorrow, May 7th, you're doing a winemaker dinner at Saint Jacques, which one of our favorite chefs, and one of our favorite chefs to quote and impersonate, Chef Serge Falco's Vigne. If he drank this wine right now, he would say, "This wine, it is good." Serge, I love you. And he is a tremendous chef. And so
I'm very excited.
We did a whole thing last year. We caught soft shell crab in the Outer Banks with Serge and a couple other chefs over at Postal Seafood Company. And we were pulling crab out of the water, and on the way home, we were coming up with recipes and ideas for an event that was at Ashley Christensen's house for a private party the day before the Triangle Wine Experience.
Gosh, yeah.
And then I met you that night. That was the full circle. Isn't that crazy?
It's just like the musicians. We're all
all connected.
Serge made this amazing blue crab. It was like a pate he put together like really fast in the kitchen through all these he just did it in seconds, and I was just watching him. He's like, "Yeah, there, take this to Ashley's and tell her that I did it." And I go, "No, I'm taking this to Ashley's and say I did it." No, so that's really cool. So you're doing the dinner there, and then after that, you were heading out to Wilmington.
I've never been to Wilmington or Charlotte.
Oh, wow.
My two next destinations.
Yeah, at Dram and Morsel. Now, I'm not familiar with Dram and Morsel, so you guys over there are going to have to reach out, or I'm going to have to reach out to you to connect with you all and see what's going on. But that's more of like from what I gather, is a little bit more of like a cocktail place.
Yeah, they have a lot of small bites, and so what we're kind of doing is you can come. It's like come for happy hour, come for some time. We have suggested pairings with all the new releases, so you can get a glass. You can try. If you come with a couple people, you can hopefully get a couple bites. And I went through their whole menu, and we paired a bunch of stuff.
Oh, nice.
And, yeah.
Technically, we don't have happy hours in North Carolina.
Oh, I know. You keep telling me that.
Yeah, it doesn't exist.
It's against the Lord.
Blame my Northern California vernacular on that.
And then ultimately finishing your whole thing at Dressler's in Charlotte, doing a dinner there as well.
Petit Philippe.
Yes, Petit Philippe.
Yep.
That is so cool. So it's really fun. I hope maybe we'll try to release this episode soon so people can actually hear and see what's going on. But
those places will have the wine. So even if you're hearing this after the fact,
that's right.
You can still go and support them and still support Raft Wines.
Speaking of which, where can you find Raft Wines locally? Like at any restaurants here in Raleigh?
Yes, I have it on my website too. You've got the website already pulled up. I've got to read it off the list. So the dinner tomorrow night at Saint Jacques is partnered with Drink Raleigh.
Okay.
And so Sandy has been a big supporter. I know that pools. So the thing with my list with my wines, and what I love about them is that they are all by the glassable price point, and so people can have them. And the best or worst thing about a by the glass menu is that it changes all the time. So it's like it has, I know, been at pools at one point, but I don't know if it I don't know.
Sure.
But I still support. That's the same thing with the Duck Farm too. It's it's not always on the menu at all these restaurants, but on our websites, we're gonna tell you to go frequent those places because they're still supporting us. during the year.
Well, on your website, you've got in Wilmington at Brewer's Kettle, in Matthews at Black Chicken, in Greensboro at Zito, Wine 101 in Wake Forest, as well as Buku in Wake Forest.
Yeah.
Buku.
Yeah.
Buku's great.
They did this cool scavenger hunt last year, and one of the things they had to do, they used me as like a clue in their Instagram scavenger hunt. It was very
cool.
fun.
And then there's this small little restaurant no one knows about. It's called Pool's Diner in Raleigh.
Any good?
I heard good things.
Good things? Okay.
Yeah. And Fin and Fino and Petit Philippe, as we discussed earlier, are all at least at some point and at times
and
carrying,
then there's been more added to that I'm my website.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to keep my website as most up to date as possible as I like hear people have it. Jason's really great about saying like, okay, it's here now. So I'm trying to update as much.
But and you're no joke over here too, because the restaurants that you are representing in like San Francisco and just Northern California, East Bay, Southern California, are all really awesome, top notch. I mean, Chez Panisse. Really?
The Sorrel was
What
by
up,
the glass
Alice?
there.
Yeah, I mean, Chez Panisse, come on, that is.
I cried when I left that
cornerstone.
tasting appointment and he told me he was buying the wine. I got in my car and just started crying.
Alice Waters, American icon chef. This is, I mean, that's kind of like hearing your hit song on the radio.
It's dreams being made.
I saw Alice Waters at the ferry building once, and I literally hugged her, and she like looked at me.
She called the
And then
police.
she's like, call the police. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna walk away
She's
now.
a very gentle soul. She's
Yeah.
I mean, obviously she's done a lot for the food community in
gosh,
general, but
unbelievable amounts.
she's a very lovely person to be around as well. I will say that.
Well,
Great.
thank you so much. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah.
I love the serendipity and the.
Yeah, I mean the confluence of things. I mean, one of the things that keeps going through my mind. I'm a person who lived in the Bay Area for 15 years and was never into wine.
Oh my gosh.
Moved out to North Carolina only to get into wine and discovered your wines. And you're now coming to North Carolina as the only place outside of California right now
Which
to
is
distribute.
interesting too,
Yeah.
because you're showing me Swarup. You're telling me about things kind of like from a fan of wine's perspective, but also from like a new fan's perspective, because I obsessed about wine the whole time I lived in California and then moved to North Carolina 5.5 years ago, and like reluctantly did wine programs. Like I was like, I'm so done with wine, because for me it was a sales job 7 years in, and I just
How do you appreciate
I
it?
looked at it differently. You know, it's like quotas and sell this, and every month is a new day and new time. So I recreationally love wine like anyone else, but I started like purposefully drinking liquor and beer to just get away from wine for a bit. So I love that now I can kind of jump back into it and try these type of wines where they're approachable. They're not stuffy and $85, retail. These are approachable wines you can drink and enjoy.
I call them food or palate friendly, wallet friendly.
Yeah.
wine.
At the same time, like, why not put this up against some of the heavy hitters? Why not?
Yeah.
I mean,
those
wine
heavy hitters.
not?
Why not?
That's a bad joke.
I mean, you've got good structure here. You've got you could hold up against any meal.
Yeah.
I mean, any bold seafood can go with this.
Yeah.
I love this with like a tuna crudo. Oh, so good.
Well, so we're gonna have to get some food, is what we're saying.
At pools, maybe. No.
Let's see. So, Swarp, you've listened to this podcast
Yes.
a few times. If I asked you at the very end to take us out, would you be able to play the role of Matthew Weiss if I said, Swarp, you got anything else?
So we've been talking to Jennifer this entire time. Jennifer's going to a few places. She's going to St. Jacques. She's going over to Drammen Morsel, and she's going over to Charlotte for another great place to eat. But you know what you're going to do? And if you go to meet Jen in any of those places, this is what you're going to do. You're going to eat and drink very merrily.
Yay!
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you.
you. So fun.
Thank you for listening to the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast. By rating us online, you're helping others to discover our show. The magic of SEO puts the ice in our shaker. Follow us on all platforms at NCFB Pod.